Hi everybody, Creative Katie, Karen Burchill. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm making a mini book made out of one piece of paper that I fold and do one cut. Here's a sneak peek of it, but you can do this exact same process and create a masterboard or create an art journal page with a similar theme. And I'm going vintage today, and the reason for that is I'm using these die cuts. It's butterfly set collection number 2 and number 3, and there's a coupon code in the description box from NINNYSNAPKINS.com. Check her out for napkins that you can use on your art journal pages, die cuts, stencils, and more. So I'm cutting these apart. They're held with these little tabs. This was a throwback to the paper dolls of my youth where they had the little tabs. It just kind of made me go back to that. So out of the moment, I took the time to cut them off and get everything ready. So this was a separate session, and I often do that. If I'm gessoing a lot of pages or doing other things, I spend my time in the studio just organizing my stash, and then it's ready to go when I want to start the creative process. For the background, I am using this, it's a rather thin paper. It is from a child's art mat that would be on the floor. I cut mine to 11 by 14, but you can use any size of paper. Now I'm folding it hot dog style in half and then into quarters, and then, or hamburger style in half and then into quarters, and then hot dog style the full length. And the reason I'm folding this now is I want a rough idea of where each section begins and ends and the patterning, if it matters. It didn't so much matter on this, but at different times it might. Now, do you see the first two sections in the top left-hand corner? They open up to a double page, and then the next two are the next double page, and so on and so on. So if you want, when you are putting the pattern on, you can use that information. I am stenciling on with black acrylic paint with a makeup sponge and a selection of stencils, all from the Crafter's Workshop and all from the designer Rebecca Meyer, that all have a vintage feel to me. The first one was Linked Tiles. This one is Vintage Scrolls. And I'm doing it in black because I want it dark and more that vintage feel. I decided to grab out my Harlequin stamp, and again, I'm just brushing on or putting on black acrylic paint with the makeup sponge. Now, I end up covering a lot of this with stamping and stenciling. If I had left more open spaces, I think the whole page may have been lighter and would have had a very different feel. Now I'm going vintage with browns and yellows in a minute. You don't have to. You can do any color. I'm putting turquoise in here, and the reason for the choice of turquoise or teal was in many of the die cuts there was blue and teal, and I knew that I was going to be using them on this vintage masterboard turned mini book. And I like using different stencils. Some are very fine, some are a little bit bolder. That one motif, you can see a lot more blue. That's why I grabbed this screen view stencil, because I'm getting a lot more blue on it. And I know that I want that to peek through. I want to see that blue even when I put the yellow and brown wash. Now, I wasn't going to use modeling paste on this page because it is folded and I didn't know how that would work. But I thought, you know, I have this gesso that has gotten very thick and I'm spreading it on what used to be a sink liner, and I'm using it as a stamp. It's adding texture, but it's not as thick as modeling paste, and it worked really well in this application. So it's definitely something I'm going to do again. Now I'm coming in with Naples yellow, yellow ochre, white gesso, and burnt umber. Now, the yellows are all more opaque, and so they are really pushing back the teal, the turquoise, and the black. They're not blocking it out completely, but they are definitely pushing it to the back, almost too much. Then when I get to the brown, because much of this paper is just raw paper, it doesn't have a coated gesso, it hasn't been sealed in any way. It is sticking to the page quite darkly. So I'm just mixing it, I'm adding white, I'm adding more yellow, till I'm getting a color that I like. And it definitely has that vintage, old vibe to it. Now, because the black was pushed back, I grabbed this layered wallpaper stencil, one of my favorites, and just adding that detail to the top. Now I fold it in half and I cut to the first intersection. Then open it up and flip it like this and push it together. Now you have to do a little bit of moving and folding and pressing to get everything to lie perfectly even. And I trimmed some uneven edges a little bit, just because I didn't like the look of the raw pages. So I do play with this a while to get everything to lay flat and work nicely together. And you can decide either way which way is going to be up or down. I'm going to end up gluing this all together. In the end, you don't have to, and sometimes people leave little pockets, so they leave one end open. Now I'm taking the black acrylic paint on the makeup sponge and I'm edging all the pages, just to add that detail. So basically I'm making each section as if it was its own page. But you can do a double spread if you wish, if you have a bigger focal point, or if that's what the look you want. So I opened it up and now I'm grabbing all those butterfly die cuts and I'm throwing them on and I'm seeing which ones I really like, what colors really pop on the background. I'm liking the red and I'm liking the ones with the blue or the teal, but I've decided that I want to add some red into my background because I'm going to have half the butterflies are going to be red and orange and half of them are going to be teal. So I grab this shelf liner and I'm stamping with red acrylic paint. And you can see how that just works really well with everything together. Now, because it got a little darker than I want, I'm using that same shelf liner and adding a little bit of white, and that lightens up the page. I could have also splattered with white at this stage, but it really made a distinct difference. And there's little white specks on the butterflies too. White markings. So I wanted that to all work together. I have a little bit of script stamp, just adding details, making my background really interesting. Now that thick gesso that I put on with the sink liner, makes the paint show up in a different way than just flat, and it adds a really interesting detail. It doesn't get caught on the camera. Now I'm splattering with gold. And back to folding this into shape. Then I grab my glue stick and I am putting the glue down. Now I wasn't sure if this was going to be a mistake, if I was going to be able to get it all together quick enough without the glue drying, but it did work rather well. And I don't recommend using a wet glue. And I'm pressing it down. You don't have to glue it all down to begin with. You could use tape. And here I'm trimming it just to get rid of some white excess. And folding and pressing to get my book to work all together. So there's all my die cuts. So now I am additioning on each little section wherever the markings are and how it shows is how I'm just deciding which one's going to work better. A little more edging. Excuse me. I'm really loving making these books. So these are the sentiments, my short and sweet sentiment pack, and I have given them to you, and I've given you white or black with white black background and white lettering with black background. And I thought I auditioned both, and I really liked how the black background sentiments worked on here. So now you can see the difference, and that's personal choice. But sometimes you want that black background, and that's why I put them into my sentiment pack. So you can email me at creativekatie@gmail.com if you're interested in purchasing this sentiment pack or others. The short and sweet pack has, just like it says, either one word to probably about 4-word phrases. So they're perfect for ATCs or iCAD size art, but you can also build them up. Now, some of these butterflies weren't quite as vivid as I wanted. I wanted them to pop a little more, and I had absolutely no problem taking a color of paint and just making them a little bit bolder. I thought I might have to put a coat of clear gesso or gel medium on it to seal it, but the die cuts already are non-porous, so I could put the acrylic paint on them and bump up that color just a bit to get the exact color that I wanted, where I wanted it. You can see the white lettering works really well with the white in the butterfly and that white stamping that I did. And here I've twisted and turned the placement of the sentiment. You can cut it apart and arrange it however you like. You can also print them out on Avery clear stickers, and then you just have peel and stick. How handy would that be? And I'm opening this page up. See these two pages, they open up to each other. So I want the butterflies to be at different angles. I want the lettering, the sentiments to be different. Because while each is its own page, they are reading together. They do open together. And this butterfly is the one butterfly that's yellow, and I thought the sentiment, Dare to be Different, was good for it. So then when I'm done, I take the leftovers and I keep them in this plastic pouch, and I'll put a link to that in the description box below. They are wonderful for storing my stamps and, collections of sentiments. Now comes the task of shading around the butterflies to make them pop from the background. And I'm using the floating acrylic technique with my angle brush. You've seen me doing this numerous times. It's pretty much part of every finishing I do on any page or project. I love using it because it's acrylic paint, so it's permanent when dry. But you can use a Stabilo all pencil, you can use a charcoal pencil, you could do shading any way that works for you. I'm absolutely loving the look of this mini book. And having a focal point, all butterflies, having that sameness on each page really makes for a very nice themed book. So I grabbed my fine line bottle. Now this is just white acrylic paint. my Liquitex Basics that I've thinned to just the right consistency. No recipe, it's just trial and error. And I love, love, love using this. I'm going to outline the words with the white, and then I go back and I outline around the pages. I decide that I want to add some highlights to the butterflies, so I'm coming in with white acrylic paint in the floating acrylic technique. And this is making these butterflies a little bit more my own, giving it kind of that painterly look. And it brightened them a little bit. You could also line them with a black Sharpie if that's the look you like. And there I'm going around the outside. Now, when you do every section, you do need to stop in between and make sure it's dry. And because there's a fairly thick layer of paint that I'm putting down with the fine line bottle, it does take a little bit of time, but you want to give it the time. Now, I could have mounted these on colored paper. I just painted them either the red or the teal. I think that would have looked great. I didn't think of it till the end, but I thought I'm going to share that with you so that you can do that. Look how nicely that pops. So there is my mini book from one page of folded paper and one cut. Close-ups are coming up. Follow me on Instagram at Creative Katie. Give me a thumbs up. Give me a comment. Thanks ever so much for joining me.